Hi, I'm Shane with etrailer.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at, I'm going to walk you through the installation on Firestone's Ride-Rite Red Label Extreme Duty Air Helper Springs for the rear axle. Before we start our installation, we want to take a few measurements to find out what our normal ride height is of our vehicle, and this is without any weight in the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the bottom here straight down the center of the wheel to the ground in the back and in the front. In the back, we're at 42 inches. Now let's take one in the front. Here in the front, we're at 41 inches. Now let's add some weight on the back and see what it does to the vehicle. We've dropped it about 2 inches. Now what is that going to do? That's going to add unnecessary strain on our rear axle because our rear axle is having to make up for what our suspension can't handle, which could cost you money in the long run if you keep hauling loads like this. Let's take a measurement of the front and see what happened up there. Now in the front, it's only raised it about a ½ inch, but again, we've only got 1,500 pounds on this 2,500 Ram. If we put as much weight as this vehicle can handle in it, the front end is going to raise up really high. What does that do? Makes your headlight aim off the road, makes your steering very light, affects your braking, and it's going to affect your tire wear, again, which is going to cost you money in the long run, and make it not only unsafe for you driving and hauling that load, but unsafe for other drivers that are on the road. Now with our springs installed, same amount of weight in the back, let's go ahead and take another measurement. You remember, before our springs were installed, our normal ride height was at about 41.5 inches. When we added the weight, it dropped down 2 inches. Same weight, we're back up to the normal ride height. So what does that tell us? One, we're taking that unnecessary stress off our rear axle that originally, before our springs were installed, our regular springs couldn't handle. So now our air springs are working together with our regular springs to take that stress off of that axle. It's going to bring our front end back down. We're going to get normal wear and tear out of our tires. Our braking is going to go back to normal. Our steering is not going to be light anymore. It's going to bring our headlights down, aiming at the road so they're not up in the air, making it much safer. We're not going to be white knuckle driving when we're hauling a load. Another great addition to an airbag setup is a compressor and a wireless controller. The compressor is going to mount to the frame of the vehicle. It's going to tie directly into your bags while still maintaining the valves in the back for manual inflation and deflation. But it's going to give you a wireless controller so that you can manage the air pressure of your bags from inside the cab of the vehicle. The installation process is very simple. Anybody can do it at their house, in their garage, with a few simple tools. You can see here it's going to mount in between our rear axle and our frame. We're going to have an upper and lower bracket that are going to be a black powder coat, so they're going to hold up really well against any rust or corrosion. For 2011 and newer Ram 2500s and Power Wagons, it's going to require the use of this plate. It's just a spacer plate. Our bags are going to be double convoluted, and what that means is, if you notice, it looks like it has two bags on it. It's actually one bag, but it's got a steel band in the center. And how this is better than a single bag is, on a single bag, when the air is out of the bag, what happens is you get a lot of rollover. And when you get rollover, where that bag is rolling over, it creases. When it creases, over time, it's going to wear a hole in it. These bags do not do that. Each section is going to compress by itself, so it gives you a lot better stability on your rear end with these type of bags. You're going to have a cap at both ends of the bag, and the bag is actually rolled up inside of that cap, so it has a really good tight hold on it where you don't have to really worry about it leaking over time. The bags are going to be a 4-ply rubber, so they're going to hold up in all weather conditions. They're really going to hold up well against road salts, stuff like that, in normal driving conditions. You're going to have a 7,500 pound weight capacity. That's both bags combined. Each bag will hold 5 psi up to 150 psi. And another nice thing about it is you can air up each bag individually for off-center load. So you can add more air in one or take air out of one to help level out your truck if you have more weight on one side. it's a good idea to go ahead and remove your spare tire and remove your heat shield to make installation a little bit easier. Now what we're going to do is we're going to assemble the driver's side airbag. You're going to have two brackets in your kit that look like this. If you notice, one side is shaped this way, the other side is a little straighter. This side is for gas engines, this side is for diesel engines. It's going to go towards your leaf spring. We have a gas engine, so we're going to be using this side. 2011 and newer 2500s and power wagons will use a spacer like this. We're going to set that on top like that. We're going to line up this hole in the bottom of our bag with that hole, and we're going to use this longer bolt. We're going to go through the hole farthest away from the side that we're going to be putting against our leaf spring. And we're just going to finger tighten it in for now, because we're going to have to make some adjustments, just like that. Next, we'll go ahead and place our air fitting in the top of our bag. And you'll notice the thread lock on there. We want to make sure that's fully seated down inside. 9/16 socket. We'll tighten it into place. You're going to have a bracket that looks like this in your kit. It's going to have 4 holes on each side. One's going to say 2-wheel drive, which is going to be the lower 2 holes. Other one's going to be 4-wheel drive, which is the upper 2 holes. We have a 4-wheel drive, so we're going to be using the upper 2 holes. Take the bracket that looks like this. It's going to face, flat side is going to face in like this. We're going to take hex bolt, and we're going to be using the 2 holes on each side. Nylon lock nut on the inside. 9/16 socket and wrench, and then we'll tighten them down. You just want to make sure that this bracket is going to be sitting flat like this when you're done tightening them down. I'm going to take a 15mm socket. We need to remove our factory jump stop. Now, if you notice when we were taking these bolts out, they were a little bit rusty around the thread, so even though we had bolts in the holes, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spray some cleaner in there and take a toothbrush and clean them out. I just want to make sure that my new bolts that I'm putting in are going to thread in clean and not cross thread. And we're going to take these 2 flat bolts, or flathead bolts, with our upper bracket, and it's going to sit just like this. And we're going to thread these bolts into the same holes that we took our bolts out from our jump stop. Then we're going to take a number 9 Allen wrench. We're going to tighten our bolts down. I'm going to take my pre-assembled bag, go ahead and set it up onto my axle. And what I want is, if you remember the angles that I was talking about, what they do is they have to fit right inside of your U-bolts. So we're going to get this up here like this. We're going to turn our bottom bracket sideways a little bit, and it's going to sit down inside. We'll take the top of our bag, we're going to slide our air fitting up through one of the large holes. You notice there's a knob there, 2 small holes. What we want to do is we want to get this slit up here. We want to line up that knob with the other hole so you can see how it's sitting flat. If it is sitting like this, then you know you're not inside the hole. We'll get it inside the hole, just like that. We're going to take a marker, and what I like to do is, because we're using a spacer, we're going to do a mark on the bag, mark on the spacer, and then a mark on this plate. Like that. Then we're going to pull our bag back off. Line up all of your lines, take a 9/16 socket, tighten the bolt down. Now we can put this back in place. Make sure everything lines up. Again, make sure it's flat, make sure that notch is going up inside the hole. Now we can put our top hardware on. Star washer like this goes on first. Large nut goes on after. And we'll take an 1.1" socket and tighten that down. We're gonna have a U-bolt that looks like this. We're gonna go right over the back side. It's gonna fit right in that notch. It's gonna go around our axle. Just like this. And bracket looks like this. Notice the rounded side. That's gonna fit up against the bottom of our axle. Let's line up the holes. Nylon lock nut. Next, we're going to tighten these two nuts down, except we want to do them a little bit at a time on each side to make sure that this bracket is going flat and flush. We don't want it curved off to the side like that. So we'll do a little bit on each side until we get it tight. Next, we're going to install our air line. In your kit, it's going to be one big, long air line. What you need to do is take the two ends, put them together, find the center, cut it in half, and that's going to give you your two equal lines for each side, or each bag. Now, before inserting your line, you want to make sure that you don't have a kink, it's not pinched, and it's not smashed at all, because you'll get air leaks. Once you got it cut, go ahead and insert it in. Now, once we got that inserted, we can just route the rest of our line back to the back of the truck, or wherever we chose to put our fittings. You just want to make sure that you stay away from anything hot or anything moving. So you notice where my spring is, or my shock is here. We're going to move this around. This worked around that here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a zip tie. I'm going to zip tie it here, and I'll zip tie it here. That'll keep it up away from any part of this moving. So again, from the top of our bag, we went up, top of our shock mount, zip tie here, went over top the spare tire bracket, followed the existing line, down, zip tied it right here, because our spare tire is going to go up, so we want to make sure it's not going to get snagged. And then we need to determine where we're going to put it. A lot of places it is right into the bumper here, which is easy to drill there. Our customer chose to run his right through the bottom plate of his hitch right here, so we're going to have to drill a couple holes. So a lot of times when we install these, we'll install the air fittings here. With this kit, there's a bracket that looks like this. It's a plastic bracket. It's going to come with some large zip ties, and you can mount it right to the bottom of your hitch. This does tend to move around a little bit, but it does work. As I mentioned, our customer wants it put into this plate here on his hitch. So if you notice the hole back here, I already drilled. I'm going to drill another one up here using a series of drill bits because our metal's so thick. I'm going to start with an 11/16. I'm going to step it up each size until I get to a 5/16, which is going to be the size that I finish with. It's going to make it a lot easier on you and a lot easier on the drill bits. If you step it up one at a time, it's going to go much faster than trying to go from here to here. And we'll take our air fitting, flat washer, slide it through, and you can put a flat washer on the front. This metal's pretty thick, and it may not leave enough room to get your air chuck on there with this nut, so we're going to leave that outside one off. And we'll tighten it down just like that. Taking my air line, and pass it through the hole. Now what I want here is I want to make sure that my line on the inside is not going to get caught on my spare tire, but I also don't want it kinked. I think we'll be good there. Measure out. I'm going to cut off about right here. Insert into. Make sure it's pushed in all the way. You want to make sure you hold on to those. It's going to protect your fittings, and if you ever need to let your air out of your bags, the end of the cap here acts as a screw. You stick it in like this, or I'm sorry, you wrench. Stick it in like that, and you can loosen the inside, and it'll open that valve up to let all the air out. So now what we're going to do is install the passenger side. Passenger side is going to install exactly the same way, except you're going to have a heat shield. So when you put your bag into this top bracket, you want the heat shield in between the two. Once you get that done, everything else is exactly the same. Airline is going to have, you're going to have a sleeve. It's a heat cover for your airline. Slide that on before you put your airline tube into the fitting. Route your airline tube back to the back, and then drill your hole on the other side or wherever you choose to put it. Now we're going to add about 70 psi into each bag and then check for any air leaks. We're going to take some soapy water and we're going to spray anywhere that our airline goes into a fitting. What we're looking for is we're looking for big bubbles. Good there. With our installation complete, we can go ahead and reinstall our heat shield and our spare tire.